We do not condone abductions. Neither does the Constitution allow either abductions or enforced disappearances or even torture. We have a very, very vibrant Constitution, and the government has no capacity to roll back constitutional guarantees. It has no legal capacity to do so. What perhaps needs to be perhaps addressed going forward is a little more transparency on how police officers, law enforcement officers make a decision on arrests and how that arrest should be executed. And we are working on a policy framework which will be introducing in Parliament to provide a framework. The same way, for example, the Director of Public Prosecutions has developed guidelines on how he arrives at a decision to charge someone. We have been in talks under the auspices of the National Council on Administrative Justice, which is chaired by the Honourable Chief Justice, whereby we want to come up with a policy rule-based guidelines on how we arrive at a decision to arrest someone and the procedures. Right now, the policy framework is not present. That is what we want to do.
Asanteni sana. Jambo moja tu ya mwisho, kwa sababu masaa imeenda na huu ni mkutano wa rais ako hapa, ni kukubaliana na wale wenzangu ambao wameongea ya kwamba inabidi tuchunge sana umoja wetu kama taifa na tusichukulie mzaha mambo ya umoja wetu na usalama wetu kama taifa letu la Kenya. Hapo awali nchi yetu ya Kenya imewahi kupata matatizo, wananchi wakaumizana wenyewe kwa wenyewe kwa sababu ya tofauti ya jamii hii, jamii ile, sehemu hii, sehemu ile. Tungetaka kuhimiza ya kwamba taifa letu ni moja. We are one indivisible united country under God, with one map, one flag, one national anthem. Na kwa hivyo tuchunge sana umoja wetu, tupendane, tuishi pamoja, hata tukiongea lugha zetu tofauti za kienyeji, tujue tuko na taifa moja. And we should not take the unity of our country, the security of our country, the stability of our country, we should not take it for granted, because in the past we have suffered when we have hurt each other because of differences among ourselves. Na ukiona mtu yeyote ambaye anataka kugawanya sehemu ya Kenya na sehemu ya Kenya ingine, ujue ya kwamba tukimaliza kugawa Kenya, tutarudi hapa katika jamii ya Waluya tuanze kugawanyisha. Tukimaliza jamii ya Waluya, tutaenda katika hii kaunti ya Bungoma tuanze kugawanyisha. Tukimaliza hapo, tutaenda chini mpaka familia zitakaa kando kando. So I want to urge all of us to respect the constitution of our country, the law of our country, and to support His Excellency the President as our leader and the symbol of the nation, of the unity of our nation, so that we can deliver on the mandate that people of Kenya has given him, even as we look forward to a better, more secure, more stable country. Kwa hayo mengi, nasema asante. Sijui kama nitarudisha kwa governor ndio aendelee. Asanteni sana. Mungu awabariki.
Inalienable constitutional right of every person, peaceably and unarmed, to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to authorities. According to Article 24, 1D of the Constitution, this right, as all other rights, is limited by, among other things, the need to ensure that the enjoyment of this right does not prejudice the rights and freedoms of others. It follows, therefore, that those exercising the Article 37 right to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities peaceably and unarmed must do so under the following constitutional and legal parameters. 1, they must remain peaceful and unarmed throughout the assembly, the demonstration, the picketing, and the presentation of any petitions to authorities. 2, they must engage in a manner that does not promote violence or riots, because the right in Article 37 is the right to demonstrate. It is not the right to riot. Number 3, they must not breach public order. Number 4, they must not intimidate, harass, or otherwise inconvenience members of the public who are not protesting. Number 4, they must inform the police of their intentions to exercise this right. They must also inform the police of the routes they will take for purposes of providing escorts and ensuring that there is law and order during this constitutional expression. They must also notify the police the timings of their activities.
The most painful days are now behind us. Hakuna haja kudanganya wananchi. Kama mambo ni ngumu, naambia mambo ni ngumu. Kama tu ni tangojea, unawaambia ngojeeni. Wacha walalamike, it's okay. Baadaye watakuja kujua you had good plans when they see those projects being launched, being commissioned. That's why the first term of President Kibaki, there was a lot of murmurings, even worse than what this government is experiencing today. And many people didn't know that the government of President Kibaki was deliberate on what it wanted to achieve. And the first term was very difficult. President Kibaki found the annual collections of the Kenya tax revenues from tax was the annual budget of the country. In 3 years, he took it from 270 billion to 800 billion in 3 years. There was a lot of complaint. In the 4th year, he took it to 1 trillion. And in the 5th year, he took it to 1.2 trillion from 270 billion. And people complained when Mzee Kibaki went for a re-election. He faced a huge opposition. Actually, was almost thrown out because the opposition got substantial votes. That's why they brought war, because the votes were were quite many, so they thought they had won. Of course, they hadn't won. Now, in the second term of President Kibaki, that's when people started saying, aha, now we see. Here is the superhighway, here is this, here is that, here is the other. And by the time President Kibaki was retiring, people wanted even to run for a third term, but the Constitution did not allow. So we are okay, and I want to thank you for your patience. Mimi ni washukuru. Wananchi viongozi, we've been very patient with each other. But I also want to bring a message of hope that the worst days going forward, Mheshimiwa Pato, Mheshimiwa Gigi, Mheshimiwa Kareke Wamara, and the other leaders, MCAs, you'll have something to tell the people. You'll have a project to witness starting and completing before the end of your term, associated with your efforts. And therefore, mimi nawashukuru sana for being very patient. And we are not quite just like that. The pain that the citizens are feeling, government and those of us in leadership are even feeling greater pain. Because it is our responsibility. The same way in your own home, when you are a parent and your own family or your children are not happy, the most affected person is you, the parent, isn't it? So we are with you, and I want to assure you, tutakuwa mahali pazuri. Mr. Speaker, we may be here making speeches and trivializing a very grave matter. It took a desperate young man in Tunisia to burn himself to cause a big change in that country. Mr. Speaker, we are willing to come back subject to the 3 days notice. We are willing to come back on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday, any day, any hour. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution says this House can sit anywhere, anytime, any hour, as decided by this House for the interest of the country. I saw the other day, I listened with disbelief as senators tried to flaunt and flag curfew regulations and applying curfew on this House. Mr. Speaker, if this House is called to decide whether or not the President should deploy the Kenya Defense Forces in war to defend our country, this House can meet at 4 a.m. in the morning, any day, with curfew, without curfew. And Mr. Speaker, with due respect to the COVID protocols, there is no way this House can be treated as if we are coming here for disco, so that at 9 p.m., if you're in a disco, you go home. Mr. Speaker, Parliament of Kenya must face the executive head-on. The Parliament of Kenya must face the judiciary head-on. There is no way we are going to entertain any arm of government to run this institution. We will not allow it. We are not kidding. We are not playing games. Arrest us, kill us, torture us. We will not yield. Mr. Speaker, the kind of anger we have caused in this country, I dread, God forbid, is the kind of anger that made the citizens of Burkina Faso to burn down parliament. And when the president of Burkina Faso, that was 3 years ago, I'm not talking about prehistory. When the president of Burkina Faso heard the parliament is in flames, he fled. His name is Blaise Compaoré. And that's how he was voted out of office, by fire. Mr. Speaker, by fire, by force. Bring the senator of Kakamega, bring the senator of Samburu, and bring the senator of Bomet. Mr. Speaker, I move that this House adjourn until when our 3 colleagues will be here. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to belabor the point. I know the trick. Those who are peddling a dangerous formula of dividing revenue in this country are using. They think without these three, they have 24 senators to pass this ugly formula. We will not allow it. Mr. Speaker, I have before me here a letter which you have received in your office 10 minutes ago from the Senator of Kakamega, Cleophas Malala, saying nobody should try to vote in his place. And I'm going to table it. It's received in your office. We cannot come here and trivialize a serious constitutional institution like the Senate. We cannot. And Mr. Speaker, today, history is before you. Today, destiny is staring at you. As the Speaker, who will deliver this Senate from the bondage of malevolent and capricious men. I want to end, Mr. Speaker. You know, there are people, and I'm glad some of our colleagues who were opposed to, who were trying to peddle this formula, toned down, including my student, the senator for Muranga. He has toned down. Mr. Speaker, there are people who have not given up, and they are trivializing this matter. And they think they are very big. We are being treated to things like system and deep state and deep what. Mr. Speaker, history is replete with strong, generous, and powerful kings and monarchs who have been brought down by the power of the people. And Mr. Speaker, today I want to remind them of a man called Belshazzar, a man who God favored to be king in the book of Daniel. Instead of being grateful that God has honored you among so many millions of citizens to be their leader, he entertained a government that was so divisive, so oppressive, and he did a big party and called all the important men whose fathers and mothers were important people at that time. And the Bible says he made a feast, and he entertained them in that feast, and even went on to commit sacrilege by using the utensils that had been taken from the temple to commit and drink the drink of fornication using the vessels taken from the temple. Mr. Speaker, as they were enjoying, as they were making merry, as the deep state was celebrating, as the system was celebrating, suddenly, and I say suddenly, there is going to be a war in this country. There is going to be a writing on the wall. Many, Tekel and Parisi. We will not sit here to discuss anything until Senator Malala, Senator Lelegwe, and Senator Lagat are here. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.